Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Lou Reviews, your destination for critical thinking in the realm of the unexplained. I'm your host, Luis Jimenez. Please save your like smash for halfway through this video if you happen to make it that far. And I'll remind you then, it's an algorithm thing. But if you haven't already, and this is more than your, I don't know, third or fourth time back, what are you waiting for? Smack that subscribe button. Smack that bell. That way you're notified every time we go live. I'm starting to put out shorts. I put out some shorts with little cats today. That was AI generated. I'm just throwing some stuff at the wall, trying new things with the channel, especially on the shorts side of it. So, you know, get ready for some weird, funny stuff that I find online and share with you guys. So there's that. And yeah, if you really love and want to support the show, do, like some of our super fans have done, like Pavlova did last week. She became a member of the channel. Fraser Johnstone last week donated £5 in a super chat. And we also had Pinzer Lou, who became a member last week as well. So, you guys, if you haven't done those things, consider it. And if you have, thank you. So what are we going to be talking about today? Great question. We're mostly going to be listening today because I was in a space last night, just kind of killing some time. It was the first one I'd been in a couple of weeks, and they were talking about Jay Stratton and Lou Elizondo and how Lakatsky's now coming out and saying Elizondo wasn't in charge of ATIP, and how a lot of these he's known, and we get, confirmation, and we've had confirmation from people like Jeremy McGowan, myself, and Stephen Greenstreet now as well. The idea that Lou appropriates these stories and then repackages them as his own. And, a lot of these revelations and quotes for my podcast audience, and if you're a podcaster, please rate and review. Greatly appreciated. When you get these revelations in this book, and if you really know UFO lore and UFO history, you've heard every single one of these tales, just in little differences to them. And we talked about this on Friday. We went into it ad nauseum, I think. But now you've got people coming out and responding to the book, and you see sort of a split in this group of people who I think used to be pretty close to one another. And I think apparently George Knapp George Knapp had his interview with Lou Elizondo last night. I haven't listened to it. I'm waiting for it to show up somewhere. And maybe I will listen to it. I don't think I need to. I have a feeling it's just a lot of repetitive stuff that he said in his book that he's now regurgitating on CBS Morning and Joe Rogan and whatever podcast or show he ends up on. Again, no new information, no revelations, nothing we can FOIA, nothing we can. I mean, again, I went into the interesting parts of his book last Friday, so if you haven't watched that, please go check it out. It was one of the more watched episodes in a long time, so thanks for that, everyone. So there has been grumblings, and when I say grumblings, I mean we talked about this on my show last December with Jeremy McGowan, and the idea that Jay Stratton had kind of had enough of the shenanigans that Lou Elizondo was doing publicly, and maybe even behind the scenes. We're going to play that clip in its entirety here in a little bit. And we also heard it from Stephen Greenstreet a few months before the book came out in a space that he held, saying the same thing, that there's a fracture within this core group of guys that were all on the same page at some point. And it seems like there's a core group of people who really believe this stuff to their bones. And it's becoming clearer and clearer who those people are. I think Jay Stratton is one of them. And we learned behind the scenes how much work this guy's been doing, speaking to legislators. Like, honestly, he's like, you would hear all the time, Elizondo would say all the time, and so would Cahill, would say all the time, there are people behind the scenes doing work that you have no idea what's going on. And you'd be like, oh, what does that mean? What they meant was Jay Stratton was behind the scenes writing legislation, okay, and talking to lawmakers and making suggestions and doing a lot of the elbow work, the grease work to make gears start moving legislatively. Lou was the public facing aspect of this that sort of appropriated what Jay was doing, assigned it to himself, and got people like me to stop everything they were doing. and I think the Pentagon did not expect this. I even said it when we were doing the big phone home, but I don't think the response that they were expecting in using this again for counterintelligence to just cover up secret tech, and Green Street goes all into this, but it's just something that we've been saying since the moment that we've split away from the Elizondo crew, if that's what you want to call it. Or at the very least, just taking everything he says with in good faith. The moment that's ended, we've really been able to kind of figure out, hey, what are the motivations here? Like, why are these guys doing and saying this? And who are these people that are working behind the scenes? And how is it that Tim McMillan is releasing parts of emails, between Lou Elizondo and Tipton, a couple of years back? And now we've got the whole email and what actually happened between Tipton and Elizondo and how he reacted to this information about ATIP and OSAP. He was very unimpressed by it. Spoiler alert. So that's what we're going to be talking about today in short. And so this is it's interesting because I'm going to genuinely reach out to some folks and see if we can talk to Jay Stratton. I have mutual friends with Jay Stratton that I'm still friendly with, that don't hate me, that understand where I'm coming from and get it. They get it. But are still on the other side of the fence doing their thing, and so I'm interested to know if Jay Stratton is ready. I mean, he's been on a TV show. He's in a band with Travis Taylor called the Skinwalker. They're making their debut at Phenomicon. So I'm sure that's gonna be a lot of fun for him. But how this guy who was behind the scenes doing all the work ended up being really overlooked when it comes to where this discussion is, or at the heights that it reached legislatively speaking. We were giving Chris Mellon when that first UAP legislative verbiage came out in the first NDAA, when that amendment came out, we were like, oh shit, Chris Mellon definitely had a hand in writing this. Like, you could tell. Everybody agreed with that. Chances are it was probably really Jay Stratton and Chris Mellon. It was probably both of them. But I bet Jay Stratton had a heavy hand in it. I bet and when they saw, I wonder what his genuine reaction was when he saw the big phone home. I'm curious to know. And I wanted to ask Stephen Greenstreet about whether or not, and I've asked him this a million times, but he did mention at one point, like, now sitting back and seeing these relationships between people, it's so clear now what happened here and what's happening now, what's currently happening now. But I'm wondering if he's maybe changed his mind on whether or not he still thinks he doesn't. He's never thought this, but there's been the theory that this guy Richard Butt, who is very clearly very close to Lou Elizondo, because he got private messages between me and Lou first, before anybody, and he's also has said very interesting things to journalists, and has made some big claims in DMs to people. And there's a big curiosity as to who this person is. And it would make sense. People have floated the idea that it's probably Jay Stratton. And I don't, it would maybe explain his silence recently. I mean, I haven't heard from him in a long time. But then again, it's just a theory. I have no clue. We have no idea, but it would make sense. It would make sense in a lot of ways, just because the silence lines up sort of perfectly with the release of this book and this rift that we heard building. But we'll see. I mean, I heard last night in this space also, I didn't record this part, but Manny 503, and I think him and I have probably seen the same information on this. There's information floating around about who Richard Butt is, but nobody is ready to release it yet because they want 100% confirmation. And I'm not going to release it because it's not my story. It's not my scoop. But yeah, there are people definitely looking into it, and for good reasons, because there are a lot of questionable things that have been said and done, especially to me by that person. And if they are an employee of, say, Space Force like Lou, or any other government entity, subcontractor, and the things that were done to me were done, oh my God forbid, on an employee server. But even if it's in your personal time, like, it's unacceptable. Like, even if you do believe this stuff with all of your heart, it gives you no right to demand things out of people with using leverage of a text message. Yeah, so anyway, let's get into this audio. So this was audio that was and of course we will switch to our Lube Reviews studio view here. This was audio that was taken in a space that was held by Chupacabra last night. So credit to them for holding this space. Again, I popped into this space, and then shortly after that, Stephen Greenstreet popped in, and so they brought him up, and then I was invited up to speak. I wasn't there to take stage time or anything like that. They asked me to come up and speak, so I did, and I asked a couple questions, but there was also some other great questions asked by a lot of other people. I'll just put it at that. And Stephen Greenstreet had some very interesting insights on relationships and this whole, again, rift, this whole behind the scenes spat that these guys are having. So we'll start at the beginning. I'll let this play for a second, and the audio should kick in.
You've been sounding the alarm. Lukatsky just came out today, and it seems to kind of confirm a lot of the stuff you've been saying. Welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts on this?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep, coming through good.
All right, sweet. Well, I personally take nearly everything Lukatsky says with a grain of salt, and I apply that rule to most of these guys. Lukatsky has one thing going for him, in that his claims about the basic who, what, when, where, is backed up by actual evidence that you can touch and read. So Lakatsky's claims about the basics, which he describes in detail in his book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, about what the program was, when it was created, why it was created, who was in charge, when and where, all of that is backed up by, in some cases, mountains of documentation. None of that documentation exists for Lou Elizondo's claims. You can't find, for example, Elizondo claims he became director of both a program called ALSAP and a program called ATIP in 2010. There is zero. There's nothing. And if he had anything, he would present it. There's nothing that shows he became the director of such a program when he claims that he did. And in fact, as I tweeted out today, Lakatsky consistently claims, the opposite of that. He claims that there's government documentation that shows contracts that Lakatsky was in charge of ALSAP, and the program shut down in 2012. Lakatsky claims he continued trying to revive that program until he retired in 2016. And Lakatsky says anything that Lou didn't start doing anything until 2016. These are Lakatsky's words, of course. So basically within a year before Elizondo retired. Now, of course, Elizondo claims, quote, I ran this program for nearly a decade. But none of the available evidence shows that. It's like at this point, guys, like 7 years into this, if there was even a shred of documentation that said Lou Elizondo is like the director of a Pentagon UFO program called ATIP, it would have been like presented by now. And I'm not talking about, I don't consider something written or sourced to Elizondo as instantly legitimate. If it was written by him, it's just a question mark to me. I'm talking about actual contracts. I'm talking about objective documentation. I'm talking about assignments, like actual assignment. Like you can actually read documentation assigning, Pentagon documentation that assigns Lakatsky as the program manager. There's his name. There's the assignment. You can read contracts where he's involved. You have this paper trail. No such paper trail exists for any, and I mean that, any of Lou Elizondo's claims. And after 7 years, you think there would be, but there's not. And but also I just want to, so Lakatsky, you just played a clip of him talking about forged documents. And I think I know what he's talking about, and in general. And it's kind of funny that he mentions the X-Files there, because I think all of these guys are just like
this
super
is very
sci-fi
interesting
fans,
right here.
They get caught up in this fantasy that they're playing this role, that like Mulder or something, in the cigarette smoking man. I think so. Yeah, I think the basics for Lakatsky's claims are backed up. They're not backed up with Elizondo's claims. I will say that a couple months ago, early spring, I know firsthand that I won't name names, but there was a story regarding a potentially forged document, a document I think that might be in the public sphere already. And there was a question of whether it was legitimate, meaning forged or not. And I do know that behind the scenes there were legal threats, and that the story got shut down. And and
can I guess at what it was? Would you be able to?
Go ahead.
Was it the Harry Reid letter?
That'd be my guess.
I was just gonna ask.
No, it was not the Harry Reid letter.
Okay,
is it the Wilson Davis memo?
No, I'm not going to go any further on that.
The Wilson Davis memo, I throw that one out only because that one's got nothing to do with Lou Elizondo. The only piece of documentation that confirms, and it's not even an official piece of documentation, it's just a letter signed by Harry Reid that says that Lou Elizondo was, and he didn't even write it. Apparently it was written either by staffers or maybe even somebody else. I can't think of any other document that it could be. Other than that one. Yeah. I think Steven might have let a little too much out there on that one, and that's your first nugget. I think that's a good one right there. To me, I think that screams, and that it was the first question that to his credit, he asked right away, hey, was it the Harry Reid letter? Like, and he said no. You know, he's not usually one to just flat out say no if he knows. I think he would have given you a different answer if he really knew that to be true. So right now I'm going to take him at his word and say it's a no, but I can't think of any other public document that would confirm, because again, like we've tried, or when I say we, I say John Greenwald has tried FOIAing these confirmations to say, okay, yeah, he was hired by this person to be the head of ATIP and he started this date. You know, there's none of that paperwork. There's nothing. There's no superior coming out and saying, yes, he ran that program. There's even his colleagues like Lakatsky and Stratton are saying, yeah, no, he was not in charge of that program. And he himself started as in charge of that program, but by the time you get to his book, he never mentions it once in the whole book that he's in charge of that program or was in charge of that program. You know, it like Greenstreet says in this space, the way he puts it, he was approached and just took the job, man, you know, and let it ride and use his expertise to get truth, which is completely different from how he pitched it on that stage in Encinitas in 2017 after that New York Times expose. You know, words matter. Context matters, you know, especially if you're going to throw in everybody's faces, I'm a hero, I'm a soldier, I'm loyal to country above all, you know, and I'll never lie to you. And the very first thing out of your mouth is a lie that you were in charge of this program. ATIP or OSAP, either one. You know, and I'm interested to see if this ends up in court between these guys, because I have lines are starting to be drawn in the sand here with this stuff, and IPs are being crossed. I feel like a little bit. I am kind of interested in listening to that Knapp interview because I'm wondering what kind of questions he asks Elizondo. I haven't seen anything online, so I'm sure it's nothing tough. But let's continue.
We're entertaining those two guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. But I will say that I will say this because I have it in black and white in front of me, so I have it, but I haven't reported on it yet. But I have it in black and white, so it's like it's something I can touch. I'm not just guessing. But I do know that those what's a good way of saying this? Like those close to this, those directly involved in this, in ATIP OSAP, I will say a major player in that claims that Reid didn't write that Harry Reid letter, that Harry Reid didn't actually write that letter, that Lou Elizondo actually wrote that letter and Reid just signed it. So that's not my claim. That's a claim from a major player in the ATIP OSAP
I've always got
arena.
that vibe that there was something fishy about that letter. Like it was like that one meme where like the person's taking the dead corpse to the ATM, low key. I've always got that vibe.
Stephen Jay Stratton is claiming that?
I haven't reported on anything yet, but I will say that like someone like in that ATIP OSAP arena claims that.
Damn.
But there's of course that, I mean, they're obviously close. They're behind the scenes. these guys are more familiar with what's up than the public is, because it's, I say it all the time, like these people, for people who are, advocating for more transparency, they're like some of the least transparent people on earth. Like
Right.
these guys, they're like demanding transparency, but they're some of the most secretive, snaky people, that have their own little behind the scenes cliques and privileged access to whoever, whenever, with whatever. And to one of his superiors, basically just a few weeks before he left to go join Tom DeLonge's for-profit entertainment company, he sends this email to Neil Tipton. He's basically like, "Oh, I gotta bring you up to speed on this like secret thing, like this secret program." And Neil like responds to him and is like, "Okay, I don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "Don't worry, like I'm gonna bring you up to speed." And then he sends Neil this memo draft, which was released just this week via FOIA. John Greenwald at the Black Vault released it. You go to his Twitter account, it's there, and you want to read it. And it's like Lou Elizondo writes this memo to his superior, and he says, "Okay, so now that you're ready to take over ATIP, here's what the ATIP is." And it's a memo. And if you read the memo and you know the truth about this stuff, he's basically just describing OSAP, and almost word for word, he's describing OSAP. It's an aerospace, program that looks at lift, propulsion, future projections of foreign adversaries. And it's like, wait, that's OSAP. You're describing OSAP, which shut down in 2012. And Neil Tipton is just like, okay, I haven't read this yet. I'm out of office. I'll I guess I'll read it when I get back. But Neil had no idea what this was, and the Pentagon just put out a statement saying it was unsolicited, meaning this was not something they asked for. Lou just kind of wrote this. And what we do know, and Lou admits this in his book, there's a whole chapter about it in his book where he said, behind the scenes during this time, me and Jay Stratton were like, we devised a war plan, a strategy, an exit strategy where.
Now, okay, I'm just going to look this up here real quick because I remember Elizondo talking about a honeypot when it came to his, when trying to catch the, UFOs, basically. They put like, let's see here. I want to put in exit strategy because I didn't search that. Chapter 23. Exit strategy. Yeah, it doesn't have anything phrased exit strategy. So during this period, Chris and I were working quietly and diligently behind the scenes to help Congress understand the complexity of the situation and identify a path forward. We established a beachhead on Capitol Hill, but we needed a way to maintain momentum and expand our base of support. Otherwise, we'd never be able to pass the legislation needed to compel DOD and the IC to action on the UAP issue. Chris, who also served over a decade on Capitol Hill, proposed a simple but brilliant solution. Have one of the oversight committees request an unclassified public report on UAP from the Director of National Intelligence. Yeah, I don't see anything here about an exit strategy, but I was looking for it, but couldn't find it. But I do remember something reference to that. Oh, what happened? Nope, don't want that. Wow. Okay. Let's see here. Do that. There we go. gosh. Accidentally opened Zoom. All right, there we go. So, anyway, let's listen to what else he's got to say. But it's interesting to hear him say this because it kind of makes sense. And this book feels a little bit like an exit strategy in a little bit of, in a lot of ways, because they've extended this thing for 7 years now. And I feel like people have lost interest.
Lou would quote unquote resign in protest and go out and make noise in the public. And then Stratton behind the scenes quietly would use that noise to push policy in Congress. And this comes after chapters of Lou admitting he was redirecting taxpayer funds to support this unofficial effort he and Jay were running. And so he admits there was a strategy, an exit strategy, a war plan. And I saw on Twitter today the theory that Lou was leaving a paper trail. He was intentionally leaving in his final 2 or 3 weeks. He already knew he was leaving. They already knew there was this strategy. There was this war plan. He was going to leave behind this last minute paper trail with the word ATIP in it. Now, there's no evidence that definitively proves that as true or accurate. But if you connect a few dots, you could see that as a potential. So people this week are touting this dubious memo as the all-out proof that Lou Elizondo ran a Pentagon UFO program for nearly a decade. But what people forget is that this isn't the first time the Neil Tipton ATIP stuff was made public. People forget that in February 2020, over 4 years ago, Tim McMillan at the debrief released a portion of this Neil Tipton ATIP email visually, literally there's a photo of it in his Popular Mechanics article over 4 years ago. It's the same thing. Now, what people don't know is that Tim McMillan is a family friend of Jay Stratton. And this has never been revealed.
Whoa, that's crazy. How far back do they go?
Great question. And that was Panda. So we learn right now that for the first time, and again, stepping back even farther and looking at the debrief's role in this entire rollout, and the first pictures that they get, the first stories that they get, the access that they get, all of that apparently is Jay Stratton feeding it to Tim McMillan. And they get, in return, the clicks and the aggregation from bigger news sources. And it's happened on a few of their stories. A couple of them they've had to retract because they straight up got it wrong, including the war bubble one. But it makes sense that Tim McMillan was using this Neil Tipton email as a confirmation that Lou Elizondo was telling the truth. And then when we get the whole email in its full context, we learn that Neil Tipton didn't give a fuck about this program. He didn't understand what the hell Lou Elizondo was talking about, and it was an unsolicited thing. But now we learned that Tim McMillan and Jay Stratton are might be childhood friends. Listen to the rest of this.
According to Tim, who told me this, their families knew each other through law enforcement. Tim used to be obviously a police investigator, and according to Tim, their families knew each other through law enforcement.
So Tim used to be a police investigator in Alabama for a few years, and then moved to Germany and lives on a military base because his wife is also in the military. So he runs the debrief from Germany. It's just It's a very interesting dude, Tim McMillan. And Tim McMillan was one of the folks who I said, be careful with. Be careful with Tim McMillan and the information that the debrief puts out. Turns out he was getting his information from Jay Stratton and then withholding parts of it to sell a narrative and a possibility and a hope and to get aggregated in clicks and revenue for the site so they can pay the credit card bill that they put the whole building of that company on, from my understanding. It's shady. It's just shady as shit. Best case scenario, it's just shady shit. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, who knows what else is going on? What other shenanigans are being pulled behind the scenes? Who's doing what and for what reasons? But I can tell you at the core of this, there are no alien bodies. There are no craft. There's no reverse engineering program. There is no any of that stuff. No hidden information about what we've seen and collected. None of that stuff. All you get when you get to the center of this onion is stuff like this. What's that? A guy who is claiming to be a journalist for a journalistic entity is taking information from a DOD Insider on UFOs and selling a narrative through his news gathering website or whatever you want to classify it, and creating a business based off of clearly biased and edited information straight from the UFO, boogeyman, Jay Stratton. Dude, it's just shady. It's shady as fuck. It's shady as fuck, Tim McMillan. It's not cool. Like, it's just not cool. It's not cool, dude. It's not cool, man. Yep, he sure does. He does live in Germany. This is well known. We used to have him on the show all the time. And we would have to coordinate that German time zone, the European time zone. It was hard to get him to coordinate with him. That is, it wasn't that hard, but he was always gracious with his time. He was, again, I've explained stories about him, when we ended UCR, especially, and the things that happened after the first big phone home, and the phone call that Mataluni got from Tim McMillan, basically saying, like, why the fuck did you do the big phone home? I'm getting phone calls from my friends within the DOD asking, what are your guys at the debrief who are supposed to be a journalistic entity doing political activism like the big phone home? And Mike's response to that was like, well, you guys don't fucking pay me. I can do whatever I want. This was fun. And it's kind of what we're doing here at the website. So they like slapped him on the wrist for that one. But I'm wondering now if that phone call was Jay Stratton. He's probably pissed off, like, yo, I gave you all this information. You guys set up this website and you do this? Why didn't anybody tell me about this? Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he had no clue. Either way, I don't know why that would piss him off. Nobody really cared. Nobody cared. But also, like, because of the big phone home, you guys got to push the legislation in part, not the only reason. That I would never say that. It's definitely not the only reason, but part of the reason this legislation passed and got through and lawmakers got behind it was because there were thousands of people calling lawmakers, tweeting lawmakers during and after the big phone home and the big phone home 2. Big phone home 3, probably not as much, because we'd piss off the community at that point with our John Ramirez interview and our Lou Elizondo interview, primarily those two. And a couple other things, shenanigans that people were pulling behind the scenes. But You get my point.
And they had a smoke cigars on Stratton's front porch type relationship, and then
That's
of course,
crazy.
McMillan goes out there and seems to have, wow, how's he have access to all this? How does he have these documents? Where's he getting all these great scoops? And what's never revealed is that Tim McMillan is I guess he told me this, Tim, that they're friends, that family friends. So as soon as you learn that context, you're like, oh, okay.
It's crazy.
So behind the scenes, Stratton and Elizondo are giving him this tipped-in email. This was all, if you read the chapter in Lou's book, we had a war plan, a media strategy, to make noise. And when you suddenly see all this context, it starts to click. Again, I just want to reiterate that this Neil Tipton thing that came out this week was revealed over 4 years ago. It was, and I fell for it. I did a whole episode on it. You can see me interviewing Tim McMillan 4 years ago, and I'm like, wow, you found this email. That proves ATIP's real. Like, this was back in my credulous days, where I just assumed everyone was on the up and up, and everyone was, I thought McMillan was, had I known McMillan had some crazy relationship with Stratton, I might have had a red flag. But at the time, I believed it. And I was like, wow, this is great evidence. And then like 4 years later, I'm like, oh, okay. I understand what's going on now. I know what's going on now.
Yeah.
Anyway, does anybody have any questions?
Like, it bummed them out. It bummed them out like it bummed me out. Like, it should bum all of you out. Because those are the facts, Jack. Like, there's more paperwork and more verification that Lakatsky did the things he did than Lou did the things he did. So chances are Lakatsky, when he says, yeah, he ran OSAP and basically ATIP, you could believe that. And Stratton was probably the guy who took the torch from him, as far as it looks like. And publicly facing, it seemed everybody thought that it was Lou taking that torch, when in fact it was really Jay behind the scenes. Yeah, dude, it's just weird. It's so strange. But Panda is in the chat here, and I'm wondering if this is true. Is Skyfire news over? Was the prediction correct? Did I predict? I'm pretty sure I called that one. Pretty sure I called that one, if that's the case. Funny. Heard Cholo, UFO Cholo said, I heard Keem pulled the plug. Me and Tupa focus on our own things. He's got the timeline. I'm making. Okay, got it. Okay. All right. Well, honestly, that's a good thing. It's a good thing, because you want to know something? Skyfire News fucking sucked. Everything about it was fucking awful. All of it. It was literally tabloid paper Enquirer news digitally. So I'm glad. It's you guys aren't doing it anymore. Whether under your own volition or somebody just stopped paying to do it. I don't know. Whichever one happened first. Either way, I'm happy you guys are on to other things. I mean, honestly, I earned that. That quietly happened. I'm curious to know how long ago that happened, because now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, I haven't seen a Skyfire news post in a long time. That quietly happened. Wow. Oh, that is hilarious, man. That is so funny. Well, I'm glad we no longer have Keem in this discussion. Man, he was annoying as fuck. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, let's play some more of this. You see what happens? Like, this space probably doesn't happen if you guys are doing Skyfire news. And you guys actually had some pretty decent questions this time. I wish you would bring that energy when Jason Sands shows up in the fucking space. Or Anjali. Or any other dipshit that comes in these spaces. I wish you guys would bring that same energy. You'd be flying. You'd be soaring like eagles if you could do that. Instead of tap dancing and trying to please both sides of this. Anyway.
It was the time. They like Lou's book being released 3 years ago would have been a coup.
Gangbusters.
You know, because the media was still sucking on the alien space monster teeth, 3 years ago. They were still all in for the most part. I mean, you had some really stalwarts of journalism all in on it. We haven't heard from Michael Schallenberger in over a year, but just a year and a half ago, that guy was all in on the Grush and the monsters in the basement. The guy's just kind of moved on.
You know what? We also haven't heard from Gaddy. Was it Gaddy Schwartz? I believe on NBC, if I'm not mistaken. He used to talk about this all the time, especially 3 years ago. It's the same thing. This doesn't go just for the media. Notice how lawmakers have stopped talking about this. And I've told you guys why I think that is. And Steven gets into it here in a little bit. Man, this was a great space. I mean, I've got 43 minutes of Stephen Greenstreet laying out what's going on here. And it's great.
And so this is the timing of it. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I think I've reported, or at least maybe hinted at some of the stuff. There's some fracturing going on. It's it's ego based. It's also belief based. There are folks who, and Lou writes about this in the book, where it's Lakatsky is all in on the demons and angels stuff. And he's writing briefs for the DIA about archangels and quoting the Bible and stuff like this. And Lou admits that he agrees with Lakatsky, but he's okay, hold up. We can't fucking put this in a DIA brief, we can't do that. They're going to kill us if we do that. But there is a rift, I think, behind the scenes, because I'll just say this is my educated. And what I mean by educated, meaning I have done the interviews, I've looked at the documentation, I've read the on-record statements, put it together. Here's my educated
And
guess.
This is a rift between the Stratton and Lou camp.
Between those camps, and it starts with, go read the chapter in Lou's book where Jay and Lou devised this war plan. And to be honest, this wasn't the first time I heard that. I knew about this, quote, war plan before Lou put it in his book. They got together. This is before he resigns, obviously, and says, look, Lou, you go out there and be the public face of this thing. Go out there and make noise, stir shit up and cause some noise and get the press to write about it. I will then, meaning I, Stratton, will take that press coverage. I will take the New York Times and I will go to Congress and say, look, right here, cover of New York Times, bam, we need to do something. You go be the public face. I'll get policy done behind the scenes. What happened, and this is my educated guess, is that Lou lost the plot. Lou eventually, the limelight got to him and started just doing his own thing. And the unsung hero of this was Jay Stratton, who remained in the shadows, in anonymity, doing the hard work, doing the, pounding the pavement, making the phone calls, trying to get policy done behind the scenes. And at some point they were it appears to be, Stratton was like, dude, what are you doing? We had a plan here. Why are you're going off and doing your own thing now? And that what we were supposed to be working towards a common goal, essentially. And they're basically okay, that didn't work out. And so, yeah, there is a rift kind of going on there.
What was it that Lou was doing that was designated as going rogue or going off script? Like what was the thing?
Trying to be a TV star, probably.
I don't know. I can only speak to what I've seen and heard, and kind of with my own eyes and ears. And it just seems like, so basically what the contention is Lou's main claims are actually what Stratton did. So Stratton was the guy that kind of had the reins with Lukatsky after Lukatsky with ATIP and pushing this ATIP idea in the Pentagon. And Lou was utilized because Lou was really good at connections, making connections across the IC, making connections to different offices, connections that potentially Stratton didn't have. And Lou was kind of utilized for that. And Lou was also utilized. He was really good at money, at finding funding.
Which you can see, like, especially if you've ever met him in person, like I have. If you've ever interviewed him many times, like I have, he's a very personable dude. I mean, yeah, I would make him the face of a company to sell something. Like if I was selling storm shutters and it was Lou Jimenez, but I found a Lou Elizondo as a face of it, while I, behind the scenes of making the sales, you know, fulfilling the orders, making sure the jobs are done on time, and he's doing the commercials. It's essentially what's going on here. And then, but the guy doing the commercials is like, yeah, I wrote it, I produced it, I directed it. And obviously I'm starring in it. I'm the genius behind the storm shutter commercials.
Moving money around and, you know, finding that support. Lou was really, this is according to multiple sources, but Lou was really good at that. And so while Stratton was at the head of this thing or spearheading this thing, which we can call ATIP, Lou was tapped occasionally, not day to day. This is not some everyday thing. Lou wasn't showing up every day to ATIP office.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like ATIP office. There was no ATIP office.
Right.
Lou didn't show up every day.
It was like a phone call.
Lou had his own job. Stratton had his own thing, and Stratton was kind of directing things. And
it was a side thing. It was a side thing, essentially. It was something they were doing on their free time. It wasn't an ATIP, that is. ATIP wasn't an official program. It's so funny, dude. We've got a fake Lou Elizondo, because it's LOU, right? LOU Elizondo _ here in the chat. And then we've got a Bob Lazar in the chat. It says that Lou cooking channel is fake. FML, I fell for it. And I can't tell. Obviously, this has got to be the fake Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar doesn't have any social media whatsoever. But I'm happy that I've attracted two of the biggest fakes online. And I mean that with all respect. I'm happy you're here. Oh, man. And yeah, we'll take a look. You know, Lou's book peaked at number 6 last week. I'm wondering, let's take a look at it real quick on Amazon. Amazon Prime. We could just go straight to the books, but I don't like doing best-selling books. Let's see. Oh, did we lose the let's see, now trending. That's where I found it. Okay, so he was at number 6 last week. Okay, number 6 last week. Uh-oh. Number 13 this week. He's only got 382 reviews. Just so you may, oh, that's a lot of reviews. Wowee. 382. Number 14, the book below him, has 24,000 reviews, and it's got 5 stars. The book above him has got 8,500 reviews with 4.5 stars. Number 11 has 353 reviews, 353,000 reviews. Okay. Lou's got 382. Now, let's look at number 6, where he was last week. What is number 6? Who's number Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's got 131,000 reviews with a 5-star rating. So what happened? What happened, y'all? I thought this was going to change the planet. I mean, god damn, dude, there's not one other book here that comes close. Okay, number 22 is the nearest book that you can find that's got 400. It's still got more reviews than a book at number 13, which is, by the way, my favorite number. Again, Elizondo's book Imminent has 382 reviews. And this other book with 400 something reviews at number 22, I believe it was. Where is it? Yeah, 22 with 449 reviews. So just goes to show you, this book hasn't done shit. Hasn't done anything. Number 29 has 350 reviews. 4.5 stars. Just a little less than Lou's. Not looking good, you guys. This ain't looking good. This ain't looking good for the drum bangers. Sorry, man. I wonder how Skyfire News would report this. I know they would have been all over it when it was number 6, but they probably wouldn't talk about it the next week when it's number 13, still sitting at 300 something reviews with 4.5 stars. I can't wait to see what it's at next week. Woo, boy, I think this one's gonna plunge, baby. I'm gonna go. I think it'll be lower than, and when I say lower, I mean higher than the 40s. I'm gonna go. It'll be around 43 next week. I think next Monday. We'll check back next Monday. Somebody remind me, please. Funny. Anyway, let's get back to Stephen Greenstreet.
Trying to pick up the pieces that were OSAP, things that weren't official at this point. And he would tap Lou to like help out and make phone calls and try to find funding and get his input on things. But Lou saying that he was like the senior leader or the director of, or was in charge of, or ran this. I think initially, perhaps Stratton was like, "Oh well, the ends justify the means," and
okay. So now we got Jeremy Corbell. Okay, so it's the real Jeremy Corbell, because there's not a. We had this problem one time where there was a fake Jeremy Corbell, but I'm pretty sure he took care of it. I know Jeremy watches this kind of shit, but greatest book since the Bible? No, that can't be the real. That can't be real Corbell. Can't be real Corbell. Greatest book since the Bible. Bible is, well, I can't say it's boring, but it's definitely better than Imminent.
Okay for him to appropriate my story because it's helping push the movement forward. And that's the goal here. We're united and that's the goal. And I think eventually that kind of like got out of control and he was like, okay, well, that's actually my story. It's great, but we need to dial it back, I think, a little bit. And it's obvious. I mean, if you read all the on record statements from 2017 till today, it starts with Lou saying, I was the director of an official Pentagon program called ATIP for nearly a decade. And if you look at his book now, he's like, I helped a group of guys out, doing some research for a thing, that we called amongst like the 5 of us ATIP. It's like, it really has been watered down.
It's like a weekend garage band.
Bigly.
This is okay. So we're halfway through the show, and this is the moment now to all of you 150 watchers out there. 156 people watching. Man, show's growing. I love it. Love it. Thank you guys for being here. Please smash that like button right now. It really does help with the algorithm. If you're enjoying the show, smash the like button. I mean, I don't know how in one show we've got the fake. One of these has to be real. One of them. We've got a fake Jeremy Corbell, a fake Lou Elizondo, and a fake Bob Lazar. Where are you, Bobby? I'm not sending you any 115 for Christmas, Lou. All right. Well, who are you sending 115 for Christmas? Because I want to go to that house and just watch them open that present. That would be great. So yeah, guys, if you haven't already, like, share, subscribe, donate to the show if you're enjoying the show, through either super chats, memberships, or Patreon. Links in the description. All right, let us continue with Stephen Greenstreet. This is just so funny. This chat is hilarious today. I love you guys. So damn funny. And by the way, I was furiously editing, trying to listen, cut this whole thing, and there's more. So if you look up Tube Macabra's account on Twitter, you can find this whole discussion.
Was
definitely go listen to it.
You're writing his book, but now's the time to just tell how it was, and you can't say you were the director of a Pentagon UFO program in this, because that's not what went down or whatever. Even though the book's cover and the book's bio and the end of the book says he ran a Pentagon UFO program, nowhere in the actual book does it actually say that.
Oh wow, that's fascinating. And I'm sure you probably heard McGowan's statements when he talked to Stratton. That he said Stratton told him he was tired of cleaning up loose shit. I always found that very interesting.
That was with Jeremy McGowan, who spoke to Jay Stratton. I think
at that Utah conference thing.
Phenomicon.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Phenomicon. Yeah, when I read Jeremy's interaction with Stratton, it just clicked true for me, because I had heard almost verbatim the exact same thing. I had heard the exact same thing before Jeremy, reported that and posted that. I was like, yeah, I'm hearing the same exact thing or whatever. But it's yeah, I mean, I've said it before. While it may seem adversarial from where I am, that I'm quote against these guys, when it comes down to brass tacks, what can we prove, what lines up with what actually happened,
right?
Personal beliefs aside, Stratton is an unsung hero. If you're a UFO believer, Stratton is an unsung hero.
And that's coming out of Stephen Greenstreet, right? He's an unsung hero. I think I think he describes him that way because there is a genuine belief with Stratton. This is the same guy that was terrorized by a skinwalker, or the that attaches. Yeah, it's a skinwalker, right? That attaches from person to person. He claims that people died from cancer because of the radiation that they got exposed to, and because their loved ones came home from Skinwalker Ranch and passed this thing along. He genuinely believes that. And for Stephen Greenstreet to label him the way he did, somebody just
thing or whatever, but it's yeah, I mean,
an unsung hero, right? Is that what he said?
While
unsung
it may
hero.
Seem adversarial from where I am, that I'm quote against these guys, when it comes down to brass tacks, what can we prove, what lines up with what actually happened, personal beliefs aside, Stratton is an unsung hero.
Yeah. For him to say that, to me, that speaks. Look, I don't agree with Stratton. I think he's dead wrong about his beliefs. And I don't think he has any evidence to support his beliefs. But he thinks the things he's seen, the things he's experienced, which I believe, He may have experienced those things. He may have seen those things. But like we've discussed many times on this show, and if you check out the links below, if you are experiencing some of those things yourself, we've got links to books and we've got links to places you can seek help down below to help you understand maybe what might be happening with you. And I think if you have a belief system and then you have an experience on top of it, it's very difficult to get someone who's had both of those things happen to let go of that belief system and think more rationally about this discussion. And we're going to get into the rationality of it as we go through this discussion with Green Street here, because I've got my questions at the end here as well. And the motivations primarily. But let's continue.
Well, if you're a UFO believer, Stratton is an unsung hero.
Yeah, man. That for Stephen Greenstreet to say that, like all of those things that Lou puts on his front page of his Twitter really probably belong to Stratton in a lot of ways, because at least with Stratton, he's doing it with a genuine intention. And again, just the way Greenstreet describes him is what's leading me to believe that. Because if Stephen didn't believe that he had a good soul, good intent, right? Like he genuinely wants to find out the answers to the things that happened to him. And I get that. But I bet you he has not looked in all the right places. And when he does look in those right places and he gets the answer he doesn't like, he immediately rejects it and goes back to where to get answers that he does like. And we've seen that happen over and over and over again in the mosh pit. We've seen that happen so many times. So yeah, it's starting to make sense, man. It's starting to make a lot of sense stepping back from this and just seeing how a guy like Lou Elizondo is not coordinating anything. He just simply influences people through the stories and the valor and the sacrifices that he's purportedly made, even though he quit under his own volition. Like, again, this is the guy that's on 2 seasons of television, and I did some homework last night and on the contracts for non-union TV. And depending on what kind of show you do, right? Like if you're like the voiceover guy for the History Channel, you're making some great money. If you're the guy like Ted Rowe, or is it Ted? No, it's not Ted Rowe. Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy. He gets paid great money to host shows. A newcomer like Lou Elizondo definitely does not get anywhere near what a Mike Rowe would get to do a show. But the average contract for a host of a non-scripted reality television show is $1,800 per episode. And I believe there were 10 episodes. I don't even think there were 10 per season. Here we go. So I know for sure we had 2 seasons. Let me just see how many episodes. 14 total episodes. Right? So, and I'm just looking at Lou Elizondo. Like, a lot of people aren't thinking about Tom DeLonge did the music for this show. The production company that provided the experts and stuff like that was To the Stars Academy. So there were many aspects that whoever was connected to the Stars made money, maybe even playing different roles on this show from the production. So we're just talking appearance fees. I don't think Lou got as low as 1,800 per episode. I think he garnered a little more than that. I think a Sean Cahill would get 1,800 per episode. If he's doing a full episode. For an appearance, I think it's just simply paying for your hotel. You get a stipend for food, and I think that's basically it. But if you're the host of the show, like Elizondo is, and Cahill had a co-hosting episode, or episodes maybe, I can't remember. I think it was 2 or 3 episodes Cahill was in. I'm thinking more like 2,500 to 3,000 per episode. You know, we'll just round up and say 3. So 3,000, you know, times 14 episodes. What's that? $21,000. Is that right? 14? No, 14 times 3. It's more than that. It's 28. There's my math. Yeah, 28, 38, 42. 42,000 to do 2 seasons of this. Right? Is that right? Did I do that right? I don't know. You guys can double check me here in the chat. Either way, it wasn't nothing. Right? Plus the position that you held at TTSA and Encinitas you had whatever position you took had to pay for the house that you rented in Encinitas, which wasn't cheap. You know, so like Jay Stratton wasn't doing this kind of stuff. So these are the differences here. And now was that by design? It seems to be.
Yeah, there was a big immune response system to this whole OSAP, ATIP. What role did Lou, like Greenwald felt it when he started covering the ICIG complaint. Like this was always a big sore spot for Lou and like the Lou supporters.
Yeah. The reason why it's a sore spot is because it's tangible evidence you can touch and read. And when you touch and read it, it conflicts with Elizondo's claims and supports the basics of Lakatsky's claims, right? And so that's the reason why they've had to essentially gaslight about these documents. These documents don't mean this. They really mean this. And it's like this like rewriting of something that's right in front of your face. But whatever. I mean, I mostly don't care about like all the whatever, whoever is saying whatever. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter like in the big picture of things, but I'm all about like, what's the truth? Like, so for example, if someone says, oh, well, Steve Greenstreet, you wrote lies. I'm like, great. Well, highlight one of them. What's one example of a lie? They can never do it ever. You're a liar. What did I lie about? They can't answer the question. They can't do it. Like I'm actually down and have conceded in public multiple times, someone specifically pointing out right here, you said this. Here's the evidence that you're wrong. And I've gone, you know what? You're right. You're right. That was a flub.
You've been promoted to threat to national security, by the way, not just liar.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Of course I have. I mean,
It's
I
very
said
funny.
it. I think I said this yesterday. I wish my life was as exciting as Matt Ford thinks it is. You know?
Well, then there's also.
Yeah, dude. It's just, yeah. It's wild what people will do under their own volition in the name of somebody else. They'll cry on camera for someone else. I can't believe this. Now we've got Arrow Sean Kirkpatrick in the chat, who says, I called the police on Cahill. He threatened to hack my LinkedIn account. Oh my God, man. This is great. I love it. I love that there's so many great fakes in here. I'm curious though about that Corbell one. I am curious. That's the only one I think that might have been real.
Like Corbell and those guys, they don't even call you by name, but they insinuate you as being this, counter intel pro sort of.
Yeah.
and I think that starts to muddy the waters as well. It's where they don't even want to engage with you. And one thing I think is like super interesting is in that Lukatsky thing, he's talking about people where, he's not a psychiatrist, so he doesn't want to go into their psyche. But I honestly think that Corbell is someone who wants us to be real, and he's so invested in it that any sort of criticism he can't accept. And part of me wonders, like, how much shit is he fed that he just believes willy-nilly and, doesn't even think twice about it.
I mean, everything he shares. Right?
I met Corbell briefly in person, shook his hand, and then I confronted him at Alien Con. There's a video floating around out there of me confronting Knapp and Corbell on their pyramid UFO reporting, and it's super telling because Knapp is the stalwart, he's the cool, calm, and collected, cool dude. And instantly, as soon as I criticize from the microphone to Jeremy Corbell, he's instantly offended. Just the question, he's instantly offended, and he gets all sassy, the way he does. He just gets all sassy. How dare you ask that question, that kind of thing. But I wouldn't be surprised, and this is a story. This is like the aspect I think that people beat around the bush with, and it's kind of always there, but never really fully acknowledged or understood. Is I think initially a lot of this stuff was nudged and kind of unofficially supported by the IC and the Pentagon. Essentially, I think the Pentagon initially benefited from the proliferation of UFO stories from a counterintelligence aspect. And someone like Corbell works well in pushing a certain message and perhaps, hiding, not intentionally, but hiding an actual truth. I mean, we do know that, incursions of Chinese and foreign spycraft over America, both big and small, have been way more prevalent than has been reported. And some of the ones that were reported quickly, and I mean almost instantly overnight, became stories about UFOs. Instead of drones, they became stories of UFOs and wild tales of supernatural whatever. And I know for a fact that some of these were drones, foreign drones, Chinese drones.
The shoot downs? You're talking about the shoot downs?
No, I'm specifically talking about the 2019 swarm off 17 miles off California over the U.S. Navy fleet. I've spoken to deck officers and TAOs and people who were there, and it's like swarms of drones. This was China, and they were flipping the middle finger at us 15 miles off the coast of California. This is nothing new. America's been doing it to them. They do it to us, but it has become more brazen in recent years. And I would say since 2017, 2016, and there's been a surge. I would say incidental. I don't think the Pentagon was like, we need to get UFOs on the cover of the New York Times. I don't think that happened. I think it happened, and they were like, okay, this works. This works in our benefit. We should tap into this, and this kind of helps muddy the waters and cover up our top secret tech. It helps cover up the China flying over the border patrol helicopters in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, and it covers up also, it's a distraction for when news reporters hear about swarms of unknown objects flying over military fleets. Their questions, instead of going, hey, are those drones? Hey, these are reports of unknown objects? Are you guys classifying them as UFOs? And then the focus is now on the alien aspect of it, as opposed to the holy fuck, China just flew a swarm of drones over our military fleet 15 miles off the coast of California, basically giving a huge middle finger to the United States military apparatus, saying we're closer than you think, motherfuckers, and we're listening, we're watching, and we're gathering intelligence on you. So hell yeah, the Pentagon would much rather have that Pentagon journalist who gets the access to ask the questions, ask the question with the inference or the implication of it being alien as opposed to, oh, this is definitely fucking China. And they love that people like Jeremy Corbell are muddying the waters for this. It makes their life so much easier. And when I pose this as a distraction to make West, I think I mentioned this in another show, but I wish I said, hey, this is a good distraction, meaning like, this is it's a great distraction from big issues. And to be honest, it's really not. It's not a great distraction for big issues. It's a great distraction for the people who are actually paying attention and hear of the swarm and ask those Pentagon officials those questions about UFOs, as opposed to, hey, we're getting reports from people on the ships and people in that fleet that they were not alien spacecraft or unknowns, that, as a matter of fact, they were Chinese drones. Can you confirm, deny, or speak to that? Like, they do not want that question, because whatever answer they give other than no, that's not what it is, which I don't think they can just flatly say that, because the event has happened. There are people reporting it. They've got sources. It just opens up a can of worms. And so, hell yeah, ask me whatever you want about UFOs, so that way I can dodge this question even easier than I had to in the first place. But I just love comments like this from Jason Brown. Says, Lou, you blew your own channel out of the water. We watched it happen. We were shocked. Stop slagging people off. It's not a good look, mate. Listen, guy, this channel grows by the week, right? So there are people here who do want to listen to what I'm saying, number one. Number two, I didn't blow my channel out of the water. I walked away from telling people bullshit. I walked away to tell people the truth and show, look, this money that I'm making, which is it wasn't chump change, is not enough to sell this nonsense to my audience. And I'd rather cut the show than continue with the nonsense. So I gave myself a long break, including, like, I gave myself 4 months away from the channel completely. And then when I started doing the channel, I first started doing gaming stuff for the first 2 or 3 months. So I really didn't get back into this for almost 6-7 months. I had my time away from it, and I had a lot of time to reflect on what happened, on the threats I got. So, like, honestly, you can go slog off. You can go kick rocks. But thanks for watching. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're still watching. Appreciate it. Because that hate watcher usually watches longer than the fan of the show. So I appreciate that you're here. Speaking of fan of the show, Complicit. I know for sure you're always here for every show, the whole show, because you're our best donator on the show. 222 donation says, titty ass, rich art butt, strap on, UAP, come on. Your comments are always the absolute most insane. I'm waiting for the day where super chats can be voice chats sent in, so you could just say these things yourself, because I know I'm butchering them, because I know your accent is absolutely, if I'm not mistaken, South African. Am I wrong? Forgive me if I'm wrong there, but I know it's somewhere in that vicinity. But yeah, it's hilarious. I love it. So let's listen to some more of this.
That'll just become a UFO story, because Jeremy Corbell, will obviously spin it as, something supernatural and paranormal. But I think I've been following this for 5 years, and I think it got out of control. I think it's a Frankenstein monster that got out of control in terms of the Pentagon, that it went further and crazier than they expected it to go. Yeah. And I think the Arrow report, the Pentagon, and Greenwald is right, by the way. Greenwald's right in his criticisms of the Pentagon and DOD and being loose with words and playing these games, because they played the games with me. oh, ATIP wasn't a UFO program. Oh, never mind, ATIP was a UFO program. Oh, never mind, it kind of was. Like flipping back and forth and all this stuff. The Arrow report was them putting all that behind them because it says explicitly in black and white, here's what happened. And they finally, it took like 7 years for them to say it, but they finally said it. And I think they're trying to put the cap on the bottle at this point. They're like, okay, this is kind of nuts. This is way out of control. They didn't, I think the Pentagon perhaps underestimated the religious zeal behind some of this,
And that right there is where a lot of my guilt lies. Because the event, the Big Phone Home 1 and 2 specifically, those two, were filling up email boxes, like actual mailboxes, voice messages. They were talking to staffers. They were tweeting at actual lawmakers, both internationally and nationally. Like, I think those events actually, I do have a feeling, and I'd love to know, maybe one day we'll find out what kind of impact this had from the other side. But I would guess that the Pentagon was like, fuck. We didn't expect that guy to do that thing. We didn't want to make that much noise. We've got people calling into Congress for this now? Whoa, what? What did they include in the NDAA? It got approved to say what? And now I really do think the sole objective of this Arrow office, whether people like it or not, and unfortunately the Department of Defense has really dug themselves a deep fucking hole here, because it's difficult to trust them at all, because they've also changed their story on this so many times as far as what is Lou's fucking role. Did he actually have responsibilities with a program called ATIP? Yes or fucking no, once and for all. Stop hopping back and forth. But stuff like that is what has dug this hole for the DOD. And now they've got this Arrow office that I genuinely think, and we just got a new director today. I'm not sure if we're even going to get to that. We might have to push that one till Friday. But we've got a new director of Arrow today. And I genuinely believe, according to the bona fides of this new guy especially, that this is a genuine attempt to try and get some good information out there so people stop calling lawmakers. And I also think that the Department of Defense and contractors and people who are familiar with what's happening here legislatively have also told lawmakers, hey, chill out with the UFO shit. Okay, it's not aliens. You know exactly what it is. You sit on the committees. Just stop. Okay, we get it. There are fucking drones infiltrating the United States and we need to address it. But could we stop with the UFO stuff? We'll address it. And that's what they're doing. But there are still slips in this system, I'm sure. They are scrambling. The DOD is scrambling to cover a massive hole in the national security system that they created by simply fucking taking the topic of UFOs and stigmatizing the shit out of it. It's their own doing. Our enemies know that if people in the military report something weird in the sky, they probably get demoted or laughed at or not taken seriously anymore. And so what do? They make their drones to look weird on fucking purpose. They launch them from shipping containers that are coming in and out of ports. And they are strapping $100,000 and $200,000 spying listening device onto a $700 drone and collecting their data and spying on us. Very boldly, by the way. Gosh, man.
They thought it was just some pop culture event. Oh, it'll trend on Twitter for a few months, and that kind of thing. But I think the religious zeal behind all of it.
Yeah, the religious zeal. Again, this is where my guilt is, because I had a big hand in kicking that fucking zeal and organizing that zeal and galvanizing that zeal into a website and letters and phone calls and tweets. I got a lot of guilt about that shit, you guys, and that's why I do this show. It's a big reason why I do this show, because I'm trying to fix the wrongs that I did with the big phone home 1 and 2. Honestly, it's caused a problem. There's taxpayers' dollars are being spent on this shit, and that's partly my fault, or at least I feel that way. I know I had a hand in some of it, and that's why I walked away from the show, guy, whatever the fuck your name was. I can't remember. That's why I stopped the show. My conscience got the better of me. Sorry.
This has really surprised, I think, a lot of people, including Kirkpatrick, who actually says that. He says exactly that. And I think it's gotten a little bit out of control. So I think Jeremy Corbell, someone like Jeremy Corbell, may not realize that they're useful to a counterintelligence initiative, but I could see that being true.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that Jeremy Corbell is being given videos by the government to release? And the reason why I ask this is because he's been pushing these videos out there. I think one's called like 21 Palms, and then the one that was like the triangle thing that are out there. Like, wouldn't people be going to prison?
Yeah. No, go. I like this question. I've asked it myself. It's a valid and essential question. It is. I've tweeted about this, and they got. It wasn't just that, but there was a bunch of stuff. Jellyfish. You had the blurry like VHS footage that he released of the red lights over the Navy ships. You had the thing, the orb balloon thing, sinking into the ocean, splashdown. Just a deluge of all this stuff coming from apparently what would be the same source. And I've asked the Pentagon, I'm like, there were Navy people who, guys on a Navy ship, and they filmed a F-1, I think it was a F-23 or F-22 that skidded off the runway, off the deck of an aircraft carrier and landed in the ocean. They took I think a photo of it and posted it, and the Pentagon within a week found the perpetrators and handed out punishments and put out a press release announcing we're on top of this leak. Here are the people who did it by name, and they're being punished. But with these UFO videos, they came out almost seemingly every week, and then they were filtered over a year, just dropping. And the Pentagon was mostly mum. I reached out to them saying, like, hey, are you guys investigating this? No response. Hey, are you guys are going to punish this? Are you looking into these leaks? No response. Follow-ups, no response. Third follow-up, no response. And
it's
every
crazy.
Once in a while, I would get,
I mean, it's clear as day. If they're not giving him the information, they sure as hell aren't punishing anybody for giving him the information. So it's a great question, even though I really dislike the person who asked it. We're not even going to mention their name. He shall not be named. The worst. Tried to pull some bullshit at the end of this discussion too, but I called them out on it. Real nice. Yeah, dude, it's just like what is Jeremy Corbell? Is he still here? You guys add him in the chat, see if he's still here. I wonder if he is. If you're listening, buddy, pal, what's going on? Who's giving you these videos, and why are you pushing them? Like Green Street says, like, you're the percolator. They put in grinds. They give you shitty, the coffee grinds or the shitty UFO videos. And then you take it and put it in your espresso machine and then hit the button, and then it produces UFOs for your audience to sip up like crack cocaine. And for you to build your your media business with. Like, this is twofold too. This is not just gullibility. This is also, you get to be in the Rolling Stone magazine. You get to make movies. You get to be close to rock stars and actors. You get to go and travel the world talking about this nonsense, in addition to the money that you make being a property manager. So it's a good life. It's a real good life. Not saying you don't work. I'm sure part of it's hard work. I'm sure all that travel, all those time zones, probably really gets you jet lagged. I get it. Especially the older you get. It's just not fun. But like, what the fuck's going on, dude? Like, why don't you ever answer any criticisms or when things get solved, especially 29 Palms? Like, that one got solved. The Boca footage was solved really quickly. A lot of, actually, every single thing that you've dropped has pretty much been debunked, has been solved. And you guys just double down and keep going. You dig in your heels. And you say stuff, possibly stuff like, you know, this book is the greatest book since the Bible. It's just, it's wild. It's wild, man. UFO Shane, thanks for watching the show, buddy. Thanks for being here. The UFO people are urinating in my bushes. Yeah. Well, call the FBI, Kirkpatrick. Well, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. But be careful if they're, one of them looks like that guy Sawan. That's great. All right. Let's continue.
Comment on this or whatever. But man, the stark contrast between leaks that happen that aren't UAP related and the Pentagon is all over them and they're punishing the people leaking.
Yeah.
And then UFOs, videos and images are just being leaked for years and they're shrugging. That is a huge red flag to me. You know, I'm like, whether they're intentionally leaking this stuff to Corbell because he's a percolator. They know if they put the water in there, it's coffee's going to come out the other side. They know if they put a drone to Corbell, a UFO is going to come out the other side. Or
there you go.
If they're just benefiting from it, meaning like, hey, we're not going to encourage this, but we are also not going to stop it, you know, because from a counter intel point of view, it's perfect. It's muddying the waters and it's saying this is this when it really isn't. And they're doing it legally. You know, it's a way for them to legally lie. You know, they're not doing an official. It's not an official program. It's not an official PSYOP. These people just go out there and do it on their own and muddy the waters on their own. And they just throw their hands up and go, oh no.
Right.
Yeah. That got leaked.
Right. And unfortunately, the guys who are hosting this believe it's a PSYOP. They are hooked on the narrative that this whole thing is a organized PSYOP on the American people, the UFO community of a few thousand people at most. Like, it's silly. It's not a PSYOP. It's as simple as people do this. Like, I thought of the phone home all on my own. Nobody told me to do that. And I was inspired by the things I was hearing from these people. That's not a PSYOP. That's just like, yeah. If you lead this particular horse to water, it will drink every time. They weren't expecting it at all. They really weren't. I don't think they thought we were that organized, that the zeal was that organized. But we were. For the few moments. Now it's no fucking mosh pit again.
At that point, it's about what they don't say, right? They just have to give it up because the imagination of the people is going to carry it wherever it's directed.
Yeah, but devil's advocate, though, the things that have been released contained, as far as I know, no classified information, meaning the images that have been leaked, and I'm sure potentially Corbell was smart, and he says he does this, so I assume he does this, to not release anything classified. So anything that was released to the public doesn't show anything, does not reveal any state secrets. It doesn't reveal anything classified tech. It doesn't give away anything. And so I could also see the Pentagon going like, look, we have one or two choices. We can go after these guys and kick the UFO hornet's nest of UFO believers by investigating Jeremy Corbell and punishing X, Y, and Z people. Or, you know what? There's no classified information released here. So, okay, I guess we'll just release it ourselves, which is what they did with Gimbal, Go Fast, FLIR, all the other Navy videos. They eventually just released it themselves because they were like, okay, there's nothing classified here. So that would be the only devil's advocate thing, I would say.
Yeah, thanks for your insight.
Ashton,
Appreciate that.
Of course.
I agree.
Ashton, I can't.
Yeah, had to cut off the next guy. That guy's an absolute nutball. But yeah, this is Corbell's videos are easily debunked. Now, if we could just debunk Corbell for Dave Foley, I'm right there with you, man. Trust me when I tell you I've tried. I have tried, and I've worked with Dave Foley. I did a film with Dave Foley. So I've got a little bit of history with Dave, but I mean, nothing, I wouldn't call him my friend at all. Like, we were not friends, but he knows who I am. He's been on the show. He was on for the Big Phone Home with Jeremy Corbell. Which, by the way, I think did I re-release those on the UCR Rewind? I don't know. Maybe I'll check after the show. If you guys want the first Phone Home re-release, let me know. But yeah.
Did you catch Kirkpatrick's comments in that interview with Brian Keating, talking about how some of these, with the motivations behind some of these people, that you mentioned, and one of them being exploiting tax dollars to put in their own pocket. And he also mentions how that's a whole nother story. I was curious if you caught that and what your thoughts.
So yeah, so that's me. That's my question. Asking him about Kirkpatrick's, comment on these foundations taking advantage of taking tax dollars to just basically put it right into their own pockets. That's part of the motivation here too. But Tim R asks a great question. These guys are more recent. This has been going on for years / decades. Who is credible, Lou? The answer to that, Tim, is nobody. There's no expert in ufology because ufology is not a field. It's not you can't get a degree in ufology unless, of course, you ask Danny Sheehan. He'll charge you $15,000 for a degree in kind of ufology, as close as you're going to get to ufology. But trust me, you don't want to pay that money. Do not go anywhere near the Paradigm Institute. It is a waste of time and money. And you're right. Like, this has been going on for decades. Almost 9 decades to be, as a matter of fact. Like, it's been almost 90 years of this nonsense where it's a self-licking ice cream cone. It's the horse with the carrot on the stick. We keep going on this treadmill thinking it's progress, and really it's just us spinning our wheels in the mud. And it's been shown over and over and over again through lack of evidence. And there's more corroborating evidence that these guys are just selling fantasy and lore and books and movies and TV shows and trying to get dollars from wasteful government spending to make their pensions fatter. Like, that's what this is, and that's all this is. And the flip side, the double-edged sword part of this, is that the Pentagon's like, well, it's a great distraction from our own tech, because now when people see something that looks like an alien spacecraft, or what they think is an alien spacecraft, or what they're definitely going to think is an alien spacecraft because of all of the nonsense that's been going on publicly, they'd much rather have you look in the sky and go, holy shit, aliens are here, instead of holy shit, that's a new Navy plane or something from the Air Force. Much better distraction. And that is becoming clearer and clearer by the day. And when I first started saying this, trust me, I was on an island basically by myself. And now we've got 170 people watching almost. You know, like we're back to like those old numbers almost. And not a lot of people have been down the roads I've been when it comes to this discussion. You know, it's just like, come on, man. Like the writing's all over the wall. That's why I'd say, Tim, is that there's no experts, man. Believe where's the data? Where's the facts? Where's the thing that you can hang your hat on? Any case you put on the table, trust me when I tell you, when you really start dissecting that case, no matter which one it is, I don't care which one it is, bring any case to the table. And there are rational explanations for every single one of them. And if you want to learn more about those things, Tim, because I think you're new to the channel, again, check out down below. We've got links to books that explain alien abductions, that explain all sorts of things. So check it out. But it's a great question. Like, who's credible? The facts. That's all that's credible. And here's a great thing that you can ask yourself before you take it as fact. Ask yourself, does this piece of information require my belief for it to be real? And if the answer is yes, you're looking at some shitty information. I promise you, you're looking at shitty information. If it's coming from a guy who knows a guy, or trust me, bro, I was part of the program, or I know, because I know a guy who worked there, my uncle, my dad, throw all that shit out the window. It doesn't count. It just doesn't count. In the world of evidence, that is. Let's continue.
Yeah, I think that might have been the second time Kirkpatrick laid out potential motivations. So there's a list of 3. I forget which interview he did where he listed 3 potentials. No, wait, it was I think it was
in Keating's interview. He said, it's money, power, and when he says power, he means this sort of fascination with being on the inside and being able to provide, like being able to say, "Ooh, I helped write UFO legislation."
Right. And I think so. Danny Lavelle is in here. He wrote an art. He did an interview with Kirkpatrick for The Guardian, which was really well done. And the Danny's raw interview was transcribed on Mick West's site Metabunk, and Kirkpatrick breaks down 3 potentials, which is the 2 that you just said, like power and then fame being one. Fame.
Listen
and
to
power.
this one.
But the third one he says, and I'm not sure he said this to Keating also, was some kind of mental illness or a combination of the 3. And he's up front. This is the guy that looked deeply into this, wrote a report on this.
And so I looked up that transcription, and we got it right here. So again, Daniel Lavelle asked him again, I'm going to ask you to speculate, but what do you think their motivation is? I mean, are they grifters in the pursuit, in the purest sense of the word? They know they're lying, that they're trying to fool people. Do they know that they're lying or that they're trying to fool people? Or do they genuinely believe this stuff and just a bit of irrational about it? And Kirkpatrick answers, so much like UAP, there's no one explanation, right? It comes to motivations that people, and I don't know why individuals do the things they do. I'm as an intelligence officer and physicist, I'm a technical collector, not a human collector. That's a different type of intelligence officer. So I don't know motivations, and we weren't asked to find out. But what I have told people in the past, including Congress, again, he's warned Congress, not only publicly, but I'm sure behind the scenes, there's generally a handful of motivations that you can think of, right? So there's clearly monetary value. There's a huge market to keep this kind of conspiracy going. And we've said that. Fuck, man. We've said these things. There's a motivation to keep the mystery going. Always, man, because it's going to sell the next book and the next TV show and the next whatever. But as the world gets smaller, this field is dying, Tim. Ufology is dying because the technology is caught up to the bullshit. People now have cameras in their pockets. People have way to record their living rooms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on ring cams. There's so many different ways to catch things like Bigfoot or ghosts or alien abductions. None of these things are being caught or corroborated or seen from different angles. It's not happening. Why? Why? Because it's not there. It's just not there. Plizzier says 222 donation. Thank you so much, Lou. Check out the Greylock tapes. I'll check them out. I will check them out. I think this is the first time I heard of the Greylock tapes. Anyway. So everything from TV shows to movies and whatever, companies that are stood up to investigate things, there's fame, there's an influence in the sense of, hey, I can get some people on the Hill excited about this, whether it's staffers and members, and they want to keep talking to me. And it's not really a power, but an influence, a motivation. There's an absolute true belief, which I would suggest is more akin to a religion than an actual factual thing. And those are the people that you're never going to convince no matter what you put in front of them. I can lay out the pictures of the classified programs that they mistook, and they still wouldn't believe it. They would say, no, that was derived from alien technology. And then there's the people that have that are unfortunately have clear issues. I've got a person that communicates with me often trying to come to grips with something that they think they've seen and they're working through that can only be described as a mental health issue. So, I mean, take your pick. It could be any one of those, could be none of those. It could just be, I want to go do this. So when I say that this discussion is filled with adults that have a propensity to believe things and also in some cases have mental illness, trauma, loneliness. I mean, the things that we've come across in the discussions with experiencers and believers alike, there are so many repeating things when you get to the core of what their life is like. So many things, and at the core of a lot of these things is trauma. A lot of trauma, and it sucks. It's sad. And then they see hope. They see hope in this alien thing. Maybe they can heal me. Maybe they can give me answers, and I'll pay anything to get as close as I can to that answer. I'll buy any movie. I'll buy any book. Anything that gives me some closure on either what I experienced or what I thought I saw or what I think I'm currently experiencing. It's why we do this show. It's why we do this show.
He is open to the fact that some of this could just be simply rooted to some kind of delusion.
Love you, Sparky. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a great mod.
Whether it's Kirkpatrick says some of it's religious in nature, but yeah, fame, monetary, power, and potentially some kind of mental illness or all of the above. And that's obvious to anyone who steps outside of this a little bit and looks at it, the big picture here, and you study it going back years. All of those seem to ring true. You have your true believers who, I would say honestly, just years into this now, I believe that Jay Stratton honestly believes in his heart of hearts that 10-foot wraiths haunted his home and tormented his family. He believes that.
Do you believe that Elizondo believes the story he now tells about the orbs?
you have to look at patterns, right? You have to look at patterns. So like Tiny Klaus, says, patterns tell stories, and he's right. He's absolutely right. Patterns tell stories. And when I went back and started from scratch on this story, I laid it all out and I put it out chronologically, and I found patterns in behaviors, patterns in claims, patterns in motivations. And one of Lou Elizondo's patterns established publicly is he appropriates something and turns it into his version of it. So I tweeted a CNN clip where he presents a document to CNN and says, this document says this, and this is what this means, and here's why essentially I'm important to the story. But when you read the actual document, you're like, it doesn't say that at all. In fact, it says the opposite of what you're saying. And then you see that pattern over years. He did that on Rogan. He presented a document and he said, you see this document? It says this and proves this. But if you do the work and actually look for that document and read it, it does not say that. You know, he appropriates the document and turns it into his version of whatever story. He did that again on Jimmy Church's show, where he said, new NSA document that was classified, now it's declassified, and it's about aliens. And you go and look at that document, and you're like, no, this is not a declassified document. This is a unclassified document that's been publicly available for decades. And it was a what-if speech given at an NSA conference. It's just a transcription of someone's speech in the 60s saying, what if aliens invaded? Here's what we could potentially do. But how he spins that on the podcast is newly declassified NSA document about aliens. And it's like, no, It's not. So there's a pattern. I just listed 3 specific examples, right? And so does Lou believe that? Or is he appropriating other stories and claiming the story is his? Does he have a history of doing that? Yes, without a doubt. You know, so I know Stratton claimed orbs were in his house. I know other OSAP folks claimed orbs were in their house. Have we ever heard Lou Elizondo claims he had orbs in his house? No. Have we heard others? Yes. Is he suddenly claiming that? Yes. And I don't understand, man. I mean, the guy who was all over the media, all over the world, I mean, UFOs are in my kitchen is a hell of a story. And he never mentions it once. I mean, when people asked him, I interviewed, I said, hey, with your own eyes, Lou, I asked him this to his face, with your own physical eyes, have you ever seen this phenomena? And he said, no. And now he's writing a book where he said, now he's saying he wrote a book, and now he's writing a book where he's saying the phenomena is flying around his kitchen and has been for years. It's like, come on, man. Yeah. What's your story?
Yeah, what's the deal, man? Like, straighten out your shit. And that's basically the last of the clips that I pulled from that space. Again, if you want to go listen to that whole space, it's under Chupacabra. You guys can go find him. I'm pretty sure everyone in this space knows who he is. And what I'm going to do is I really wanted to play this clip because, again, we brought this to everyone's attention on December 3rd, 2023, when I had an interview with Jeremy McGowan about Jay Stratton having issues with Lou Elizondo. And so I'm going to end the show on this clip. And before we get out of here, of course, thank you all so damn much for coming to hang out today. Man, we had a big crowd. We're having big crowds this last few weeks. So thank you guys. Thank you for being here. If you haven't already, I saw last I checked there was 70 likes. If you haven't liked this show, you made it this far, please smash that like button now. It really does help that algorithm. If you haven't subscribed to the show, please do. Ring the bell, that way you're notified anytime we go live. If you want to support the show, we've got links in the description. Thank you all so damn much, seriously, for being here. And for helping us raise the bar when it comes to UFOs and the phenomenon as a whole, and grifters and people who take advantage of the mentally vulnerable. So I appreciate everyone being here. I really do. It's been a killer, fun show. So with that said, I'm going to let McGowan end us out here. Listen to this.
I basically cornered Stratton in the main ballroom of the conference.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him, and
I can just
think he was
imagine
talking
you.
to.
Hey, Christian, come here. Just
Well, no, I
cornering
stood behind. I think he was talking to James Keenan at the time.
Okay.
And James had a booth there. Stratton was standing there talking to James. Stratton's wife was about 3 or 4 paces behind Stratton. And I just stood there and listened for a few minutes. And then I just tapped Stratton on the shoulder. And I was like, hey, I don't know if you know who I am. I introduced myself. He goes, yeah, I know who you are. And I was like, okay. The only reason I'm talking to you is because I wrote these series of articles on Lou. He goes, I'm aware. And I said, I just want to know if I'm on the mark, if those were legitimate experiences that I had, or what your take is. And I will preface this by saying, I asked Stratton for a picture. He allowed me to take a picture of him, and he asked that the picture not be posted on social media. And I have not posted the picture on social media. He did not ask me to not divulge our conversation on social media. He only asked me not to post the picture. Because at the time, I think it was timing context, Stratton wasn't known to be at the conference. He was there with Travis Taylor at the conference. Anyway, when Stratton replied to me about Lou, he told me exactly what Lou did with ATIP. And he said it wasn't Lou's program.
In other words, what Lou's
ran
job
ATIP.
was.
He told me that Lou never ran ATIP. Now, I will say that Stratton did speak as if ATIP was an actual program, but he never confirmed nor denied that it was. But he said it was not Lou's program. He said it was his program. He told me that he selected Lou because of Lou's knowledge of people and other programs. And I'm paraphrasing this. I'm not saying an exact quote because I didn't take notes, but I'm paraphrasing this from memory. Stratton said that he chose Lou to bring access to ATIP of other programs. And I was like, what do you mean? And this is where I'm paraphrasing. He goes, and again, not a direct quote, don't hold me to this, but this was the gist of what Stratton was talking about. For example, if ATIP was looking at an incursion of Chinese drones over, let's say, the USS Roosevelt or something like that, and there is another department within the DOD that has that information, and ATIP did not have access to that information, and they couldn't put 2 and 2 together. They couldn't do a full analysis on the case because they didn't have access to that information. Stratton would pick up the phone. He would call Lou. Lou would make an introduction to the person that ran that operation, and then Stratton would have access to the information that he needed. Lou did not research, according to Stratton, Lou did not research UFOs or aliens or anything on behest of ATIP. Lou was a facilitator of introductions.
And we've heard him say that himself. We've heard him say he's not into UFOs, never has been, never will be. He's a counterintelligence, counterinsurgency guy.
But that came from Stratton. Stratton told me that Lou did not run ATIP. Furthermore, Stratton also said, and this is a quote, this is not a paraphrasing, he goes, I've gotten tired of cleaning up Lou's shit. But at the same time, he went on to say, Lou does really necessary work that I need him to do. And he wasn't talking in past, he was talking in present. And that was this year. This wasn't, prior to him leaving in 2017 or whenever he left. That was this year, right? Stratton said, Lou does work I need him to do. And I asked Stratton what he meant by that. And I prefaced it by saying, why is all of this going out to podcasts? Why is it going to social media? Why is it, what is happening? And he says, and this is paraphrasing, he says, when I need something done, if I can't get it done by direct ask, I have to go out and use the media. And he says, I use the legitimate media. I don't use the Daily Mail or I don't use Liberation Times. I use the legitimate media.
He was on the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
Well, he goes, I use it to embarrass the people that denied me access to what I need access to. And I took that to mean that what we're seeing in the media isn't necessarily true. It's what Stratton and whomever Stratton was working with or for or beside of, they would craft, they would put it together, and then some general somewhere is getting a call from a congressman saying, what the hell is going on with these werewolves? And it
There you go, guys. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see y'all soon. See you on Friday. Peace out.